Welcome to the Forest Creek podcast. This episode we've been technically kind of anticipating for about 6 months. It is quite literally, it's the day before we're halfway into the year. It's the 6th month, it is the 14th day. When it's the 15th day, I guess we could approximately call that the middle of the year. Jared and I, we did I want to say episode 23. I'm probably wrong.
I don't know.
That we did the podcast 2023, which was our New Year's podcast. We did it the day after a New Year's party.
That was number 23? That's wild.
I think so. I hope I was aiming to get that there. Let me actually just check it right now. Nope, it's not 23. It's actually 21.
RIP.
R.I.P.
2 years late.
The episode 2023, we did a recap about things that happened throughout 2022, and then we started talking about goals. Stuff that we were hoping to do and care about. Part of that was we talked about themes and what your theme was for the year. Mm-hmm. I guess we weren't super decided on our themes at that point. Yeah. Well, I knew generally what I wanted to do. I just didn't have a label for it.
Yeah.
I didn't sit down with the team and come up with something.
I knew exactly what I wanted to do mid-December.
What is?
I was gonna be drawing the whole year.
Yes.
Yeah, and get better at drawing.
I remember. You spent a lot of time talking about it. We spent a lot of time talking about that. We spent a lot of time talking about a lot of things, including graveyard shifts, which you were also, I think, doing at the time.
Oh, that was 3 months before. That was October,
or at least
November.
Waking up on time was another thing that we were doing. Andres, you're here too.
I am.
Yeah.
What was did you have a theme or a resolution?
Bruh, I don't even remember.
We'll wind our way back to it. I wanted to start by talking about an update that we can coincidentally make. Because when we first did that, one of our highlights was that literally, because it happened just before New Year's, the infamous internet celebrity Andrew Tate was arrested for incriminating himself with a pizza box as he was getting into his Bugatti and getting into a fight with this autistic Swedish girl on the internet, Greta Thunberg. And it sparked some controversy. People were like, oh, he's human trafficking and stuff like that. That was his accusation. That's why he got pulled in.
Which he'd been accused of before with no evidence.
Right. They kept him in Romania. Apparently they can keep you in jail until they find evidence.
Really?
They can keep you in jail for 30 days.
Oh.
And if they find something that they think could be evidence, they have the right to extend it another 30 days to a certain maximum. They reached that maximum with Andrew Tate and have found no evidence. This is the reports. Anybody can read it.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't know whether or not he was human trafficking, but no evidence has come out about it. It's it's one of those accusations that you look back on and be like, yeah, I guess it would fit. I guess. But at the same time, it's strange. It doesn't, in a lot of ways, it doesn't fit because it's the dude has closed circuit television in his own home. So if somebody was to catch you doing something, it's you've recorded everything that happens in your own house. The other part to it too is if you're an international human trafficking criminal, you're probably not very vocal on Twitter.
Yeah, that was one point I heard somebody bring up that was pretty solid.
Teaching courses, it's hey, my hat off. If you were doing all that stuff and
Dude,
somehow
can you imagine if Tim
off,
Dillon was a human trafficker?
Bro.
Or Joe Rogan?
That would be insane. It's a lot of things would make sense. I'm gonna be real. It's a lot of the influence and the outreach and the fame and the wealth, it would make sense, but at the same time, it would be really stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, my dear podcast listeners. This is Raph from the future. As I'm editing this show, news has come out that Andrew Tate has in fact been charged officially in Romania with the counts that he's been accused of, including human trafficking
It is maybe worth noting that the evidence hasn't been released to the public that they've used to charge him at all. It may also be worth noting that the President of the United States' son, Hunter Biden, has also recently pled guilty to some sort of tax charge, which is an interesting coincidence to see these major figures in court on the same day. Just a coincidence. I want to point out that we have no comment whether or not he is innocent or guilty. It's not really our business. We wish everybody involved well. We hope that justice is found where the truth is. But I want to emphasize that this show isn't about his character. It's just the message that he has been putting out, the core one that is valid, that we'll talk about in just a moment here. But again, just wanted to point that out. We're not here to report controversy. There's a million clickbait sites and other YouTubers and podcasters who will happily do that for you. But in terms of self-betterment, yeah, you're in the right place.
That being said, his message, he's very arrogant and brash and gives a lot of people a lot of reasons to dislike him. Because a lot of the times when he makes these offhand comments about a man's relationship to women and stuff like that, because it's very almost materialistic in its value system, in its epistemology. But at the core of it, the reason why it resonated with so many people is because the core message was, to all young men, you're worth something. Act like it.
Which is the same message as Jordan Peterson.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's funny. It's like when you call Jordan Peterson a white supremacist or whatever it is, and you shut him down, it's like, what's going to take its place? Apparently, every time you cut the head off a Hydra, a bigger one grows. And now we have Andrew Tate. Because you said no to, like, Dennis Prager or whatever, you now have Andrew Tate. And this is the one head of the Hydra you say can't seem to cut off. 90 days later, he's released from prison. He's been on house arrest, still is, to our knowledge. But now he's opened up. He's done a couple of interviews, primarily one with the BBC, where he kind of made a fool out of them. Because they came out at him with, like, nothing but attacks. But obviously he has his rebuttals.
The only thing I remember about that was pretty funny is that they straight up quoted him, and I remember the clip of him saying it, and he was like, I never said that. How he would get girls to join his OnlyFans thing.
Yeah.
And it was like, make them fall in love with him, go on dates, to the point where they would do anything for him and then get them in front of a camera. And the reporter quoted that exactly. He was like, you're just finding stuff on the internet and making things up and saying it. You haven't done any research. And it's like, no, I remember that when you actually did that. You specifically said those exact words.
We should clarify what this OnlyFans thing is. Because it sounds human trafficking adjacent, and it's one of those things that makes you think it would fit. But also, the actual thing he was doing was entirely legal, right? Just like OnlyFans itself is legal. I'm not saying it's moral. I abhor it. I think it's terrible. I think nobody should subscribe to OnlyFans. I think it's a really bad.
What about what about the people that have cooking channels on OnlyFans?
You can do that on YouTube.
Yeah,
You can do that on Patreon.
but it locks it.
Sure. Just pointed finger guns at me. But the thing he was doing was basically, in his explanation, women who do work on OnlyFans, on their own, they might make $1,000 in whatever time period. If they work with him, he uses his influence and his network and his resources to help them scale up what they're doing.
Yeah.
And now instead of making $1,000, they make $4,000, but then they split it with him.
Yeah.
So he's kind of like an OnlyFans pimp. Makes a lot of money off of this, boosts their network. They make more money, so it's not like it's a bad deal for them if they're committed to doing OnlyFans anyway.
Yeah. Except for
like,
the fact that they're doing OnlyFans.
Again, I think it's amoral.
Yeah.
I think nobody should be subscribing to OnlyFans. Find your cooking channels elsewhere. We were just watching this lovely Italian man teaching us how to make carbonara.
Oh, yeah.
Don't
even remember his name, but he was a great old chef. I think he's dead now.
Really?
Yeah. I found that soon after I found that carbonara video.
Requiesca in pace. But that's what he was doing. Now that Andrew Tate has been released from prison, he's recently, after the BBC, he did a second podcast with Patrick Bet-David. He did the PBD podcast. When he first did the PBD podcast, it was like a 4 or 5 hour episode where he basically explained his entire ethos. It's a great, honestly, if you don't know anything about him, if you don't read any of the online comments, because I dodged everything everyone else was saying and I watched that one podcast. And I got a chance to see what the deal was. And I could make up my own mind about what I think about this character. I'm really glad I didn't just absorb it from memes, because now I actually know what's going on. And now he's done a sequel to that. So basically, after the BBC interview, I think he capped it off. He's like, I don't want to get myself in any more situations where people are putting a target on me. Now, if you want to interview me, it's $50,000. Patrick Bet-David, multi-millionaire entrepreneur who runs Valuetainment, which is a great company.
He's that guy.
Yeah, he runs Valuetainment, which is an awesome. It's like
I've seen one episode of it, maybe.
They get all kinds of guests on. It's kind of supposed to be an entrepreneur's podcast, but they have all kinds of things going on. They get journalists, they get politicians, and all that. Patrick Bet-David interviews him a second time now that he's out of jail. They go to his house, they set up the interview, they do another. This time, instead of doing a one long stretch, they split it up into 5 parts. I'm not all the way through it yet, but what I'm getting from it is that Andrew has come out of prison and his message is now less material. It's not about the Bugattis and the women so much anymore. It's about like honor. It's about like your substance, your personal substance. And part of it, I'm sure, is because he's recently like gone into a full conversion into Islam. So, you know, a spiritual conversion, that kind of thing, is bound to affect you, bound to change your outlook on life. But if I was to sum up what his new addition to his message is, it is no longer good enough. It's no longer adequate for you to be adequate. It's no longer good enough for you to simply be average. It's not good enough for you to be good. You have to be great. To survive, you have to be exceptional. You have to push yourself to the level of excellence. You can't just be satisfied anymore. You have to keep pushing, because that's the only way to get out of like the rut of entropy, right? And this entropy part is like how I would explain it, right? Entropy in the sense that, you know, in physics, it's the concept that everything is constantly going into a state of chaos, it's decaying, it's falling apart. A lot of people like to sum up the meaning of life, as they would put it, they would say negative entropy. Do something with your life that is positive enough that it adds a profit to the world despite the constant state of entropy. It survives you. If you are just good, if you are just adequate or just average, you're not actually pushing past entropy anymore. The level of entropy that we're seeing in modern culture, the level of decay of things going wrong or bad, is now so much that it's not good enough for you to just be good. You have to now push yourself into being great. You have to strive to be exceptional. I think there's a little bit of a cynicism to that, in saying that, yeah, things are worse now than they've always been.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, it's kind of true. We are dealing with new challenges in modern culture. And we have to strive to find new ways to add that negative entropy, right?
Do you have the best thing what you posted recently, that ancient Assyrian text?
Right, yeah, let me pull that up.
That was amazing, because that, I don't know, it's the perfect antithesis to this, I suppose.
People like to allude to the fall of Rome often, and they say that actually a lot of the things that we're seeing in our culture right now are similar to the state of culture in the fall of Rome, when we'd become so decadent that we were being removed from the values and the epistemology that led us to being great in the first place, right? And you read ancient Assyria is like 4 empires before Rome.
It's got to be pretty amazing, because I'm reading the Old Testament right now, and the Assyrian Empire is taking over absolutely everything.
Yes. Actually, like, if you wanted to detail it, it's basically there was the Assyrians, then there was the Persians, then there was the Greeks, and the Persians were at war with the Greeks until finally, out of all of that, Alexander came and he took over the Persians. But then Alexander dies and the whole empire falls apart. And after years of combat and like warring states, Rome rises, Rome forms its own empire, and then that falls. It's like, so we keep going through all of this. But
Yeah.
the oldest of them, probably what would have been like after the reign of the pharaohs, well, the furthest back we usually go is the Mesopotamians. So the Mesopotamians, then the reign of the pharaohs, and then whatnot, and it keeps on falling until we reach the Assyrian Empire. This would have been from the fall of the Assyrian Empire. The quote from an ancient stone tablet: "The earth is degenerating today. Bribery and corruption abound. Children no longer obey their parents. Every man wants to write a book, and it is evident that the end of the world is fast approaching." Written circa 2800 BC.
Yep.
So this kind of thing is always going on. You know, it's like some might even comment on the cyclical nature of Revelations. Right? A lot of the symbology of Revelations is stuff that is happening now. So it's not just like a prophecy of things to come. It's here's how those empires before you fell. Here's how your empire is falling today.
That's an interesting
Here's
thought.
how your empires are going to fall tomorrow.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, that's it. It's like we're always in the constant state of revelations. AD, you normally jump in here when we bring up something biblical. I'm surprised you're being this quiet.
We haven't said anything specifically Catholic yet.
No, I'm thinking. I was like wondering where the conversation was going, though. I was like, hey, we're going. I thought we are gonna go to the more like towards goals, like resolutions, and then now.
Well, hey, didn't you just listen
Drifted.
to what he just said? Become super amazing and best.
No,
good.
I hear that.
Well, the thing that we're getting at is memento mori.
Whoa, this is not where I thought it would go. Even though I read the notes beforehand.
Remember, you will die.
So that's the difference. I didn't read the notes beforehand.
The meaning in Latin is remember, you will die. It's a concept that arose around ancient Rome. I always like to explain it in contrast to the word triumph. Because the word triumph was the name of the celebration that Roman generals would throw for themselves when they came home after a campaign. If you won, if you managed to conquer, you know, like you defeated the Gauls or whatever, you'd come home and you'd have a triumph.
Yeah.
But because of this situation, even like their Roman politicians, generals, and the emperor in particular, like they were exalted to the religious level. There was literally a cult of the emperor. In
Really?
the same sense, yeah, there was a cult dedicated to worshiping the emperor.
Wow.
In the same sense, generals were also at that height of like religiosity in terms of how much reverence would be thrown at them. And, you know, if you're in that situation, it's going to get to your head. You're going to grow a pretty big ego. And obviously the Romans, they're not dumb people. Some of them began to observe when their egos get big, they can mess up. They can overestimate things. Pompey famously, like, he lost to Caesar trying to take over Rome because he misunderestimated. He went into like this battle with exceeding Caesar's soldiers by like tens of thousands, and Caesar beat him
Oh my goodness.
because of a strategic move. Pompey just thought he was going to take over all the
Did
numbers.
he just flank him or something?
Pretty much.
Oh wow.
Just hat trick him. But so what they started doing was they would get one of the soldiers. They'd say, your job is to stand next to the Roman general and tell him memento mori.
Oh yes.
Remind him that he is just a person,
I believe I remember this from the Daily
that the
Stoic.
general will die. It became a very popular Stoic term, memento mori. I'm reading Meditations by Marcus Aurelius right now, and there's a lot of that.
So how much earlier is this? The first time it came about with? Did you say it was Alexander?
The first time it came about would have probably been around the time, well, I want to say around the time of Julius Caesar.
Okay, and this is before or after, or like during Stoics, essentially.
Stoics were kind of ongoing, you know, like
But they were more in Greece.
it started, like the ideas started in Greece. I think it metastasized. It became a big deal in Rome,
Yeah.
right? And around Epicurus.
I guess my real question is, did Stoicism influence that practice of having a guy tell the emperor memento mori, or did that come up on its own?
I think memento mori kind of joined Stoicism. Like it might have started independently, but we know it as a part of like Stoic
Yeah,
practice because
yeah.
by the time Aurelius comes around, you know, it's a big deal.
Yeah. He's got the daily Stoic coin in his pocket.
But then you start to like apply it to yourself and you go, remember you will die. Time, your time is finite. Entropy is coming.
You know what? My version of that I've been doing, because I don't necessarily go memento mori and remember that I'm gonna die someday.
Yeah, it's kind of grim.
Yeah, it's more so my version of it is essentially, when's the next time I'm gonna get to do this thing? When an opportunity pops up. Like last night, AD said, "Hey, can I sleep over?" And I was like, you know what? This guy's moving in a month or two. How many opportunities am I gonna get to have him sleep over?
Yeah. There's definitely a level
and
to
also, it encouraged him to do the dishes, which he wasn't doing.
I wasn't going to do the dishes, even though I needed to for this podcast. So thank AD that my dishes are...
But remembering you will die, it's like your reminder, time is finite. The opportunities are limited. You're not going to live forever. Don't act like you are going to live forever. In the same way that you should act like you're worth something, you should act like that worth has a limit. You're not going to be young forever. You're not immortal. So what do you want to do before it's over? How are you going to put that negative entropy into the world? And that often gets me thinking about, like, what are my ambitions? What are the dreams? What are the goals? How do I cross the items off the bucket list? How do I build that negative entropy before it's over? While I have this opportunity, while I have this time in front of me. We talked about this in the Ozymandias podcast quite a bit. Because that podcast was about ambitions. I kind of reflected and went, you know, when I was young, I was Epicurean. I was taking my time. I was learning to enjoy life. But I kind of regret that I wasn't as driven and motivated as I am now. Because I feel like I could have made more use of that time. I learned important things along the way. And I'm happy that I can apply them now. But I do wish that I had the youth from when I was 20 and when I was 25. I wish I had those 5 years.
Dude, I feel it, because it's like, I just look at the 5 months I had when COVID first hit and I was between jobs. All I did literally for about 5 months, pretty much the whole day, I just played Animal Crossing and watched Community.
Yeah.
And that was almost it.
Yeah. Dude, I freaking played Civilization like 5 times. How many times am I going to nuke the digital world?
Yeah.
It's got a limit. It's got a limit to how many times you could do this stuff. It's like I've grinded video games. I've chewed through endless amounts of TV seasons of bad shows. I watched a lot of bad television.
I still can't believe you finished Once Upon a Time.
Oh, yeah, baby. They filmed it in my town. How could I not?
Yeah, my buddy worked on it. Actually, I worked on it.
AD, you've changed a lot in the time that I've known you. Like, I was talking about it. We were talking about it yesterday. Like, you've gone through a lot of phases.
Yeah.
Do you often wonder, it's like, what could I have done if I knew now what I
Sometimes.
what I know
I think
now?
sometimes, but you got to be careful with that stuff because you don't want to become like depressed or something, right? Because depression or despair has a tendency to come about when you realize you can't change something, right? If you can do something about it, you might be more prone to anger, because anger is a sort of passion, it's like a sort of like a vengeance. It's like, oh, something's wronged me, and now I can actually do something. So you can actually you can channel anger, and anger is interesting because you can direct it. But if you're like looking at the past, like, oh, I could have done that better, I could have done this better. It's not necessarily wrong to look at the past, but it's more so, what wisdom?
Yeah,
what wisdom can you?
It's not just looking at the past; it's gleaning wisdom from it.
Exactly.
And learning
In
from
that
it.
sense, I think it's appropriate. But
just looking at it with despair.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes if you just get in the habit of just being like, oh, that was bad, oh, this was cringe, you know, or I could have done this and I could have done that. It's like,
or even a similar sort of opposite one.
Yeah.
Looking back on childhood, thinking how much better it was and how you want to be a child again.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think you have to, learning to live in the present, right? So if you read I read a lot of writings from the saints, and every single one of them are incredibly strong on this point, which is you have to live in the present, because that's actually the only thing that really exists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's very interesting because the way the culture is and it's a lot of has to do with money, economy, right? It's like we're always trying to predict what's going to happen in the future. So if you're a very money oriented person, you're probably going to be obsessed with time, most likely, and you're going to be obsessed with like what's coming in the future. You might analyze the past to try and predict what's going to happen in the future. So that's why you're always looking at trends, graphs, all these things. But it's hard to live in the present if you're constantly like that. And my dad, he's a finance guy, and that's his world, right? So he's always thinking about the future. But then that can sometimes cause anxiety, and then you're missing the present. Or if maybe for the saints, they say that the will of God, you cannot interpret the will of God in the future. What is his future will? What is his like you can't do it. It's not, his will only exists in the present, right? And so you have to learn to live in the present, and in doing so you actually tap into this power, right? This you're eating cheese.
Come on. I was doing so good.
Yeah, it's okay. Blessed are the cheese makers.
I freaking love that Monty Python.
Dude, I literally chopped it and picked it up before you called me out.
No,
Yeah.
I was like, let him do it. Have some manchego. But to expand on what you were saying is actually we talked about the similar idea in our 2023 podcast. We were saying that, I was saying at least, when you look at,
Sorry.
it's pretty good.
That was candid.
It is pretty good. When you look at what you're starting with, you shouldn't go, hey, I got so fat. You just accept that this is the pounds that I'm at right now.
Yeah.
This is where I'm starting with. Look at the money in your bank account. Don't think, oh, I spent so much money. It's like, this is the amount I'm starting with. I'm going to save on top of it. There's a way to look at memento mori in a way that invites despair. My death is coming and I've wasted so much time already. But there's a way to look at it as a motivator too. And like, I have time. Still have time.
Yeah. Another thing about like I read a lot of the writings of the saints, and they obviously talk a lot about meditation on death. Like memento mori is a very, like, you'll see that written on church doors, on books, meditation books. It's a huge, like, in Lent there's a death, judgment, heaven, and hell, the four last things. This is like a major meditation that Christians are called to do, but death is obviously the first one. Saint Alphonse basically says, as you live, so you will die. Right? So it's not, a lot of times people think like, oh, I can just change my ways, or I can maybe get right with God in the last, if you believe in God, in the last maybe half an hour or whatever of my life. It's like, that is very rare.
Hey man,
Right.
Saint Dismas is a real person. The right-hand thief.
I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm
right-hand
definitely not
thief?
saying it's
Yeah,
impossible.
the one
but
who was on Jesus' right hand being
yes.
crucified
Yeah,
is
yeah,
like
yeah.
in his last moments, literally.
the good
Yeah.
thief, yeah.
Still lasted longer than
Penitent.
Jesus on the cross, though.
So, but there's just generally speaking, like, give it like probably like 90+% of cases, it's whatever you are in your present state is probably who you're going to be for eternity if you were to die in this moment, right? And so there's this idea of like, there's a trajectory. Which trajectory are you heading into? And so that's why, like, even the Stoics, they didn't believe in a sort of heaven, but like Aristotle, he did believe in basically natures, right?
Especially the ancient Greeks, they still had the idea of logos, and they passed that to the Romans.
they
So
did,
they
yeah.
did believe
So-
in like a core truth and nature to the universe.
Yeah, and so Plato was much more, I think, celestial in his philosophy. So he believed in like the world of the forms, and that we would all be absorbed into the one, and things like that. Aristotle wasn't quite like that, but they still basically held the importance of basically reaching who you're really meant to be, right? And so like virtues are the means or basically these are qualities which you can adorn your soul with, and basically you act in accordance with your nature. So Aristotle was very, like, I mean, in terms of just being very observant of the world and saying like,
Was
okay,
he the one that I think it was Catholics called the Blessed Pagan?
Aristotle.
yeah, he was called because he's probably one of the, him and St. Thomas are
A
probably
lot
like the
of the
greatest
things that
philosophers.
Aristotle came up with and wrote down, they became the foundations of like mathematics and
Yeah.
philosophy and
Yeah.
medicine and like a lot of different
Right.
fields.
Yeah, because his epistemology is the one that is the most commonsensical. It makes the most sense. It's the one which is totally based in reality. Like he is very much a realist, but not like a realist the way that Plato was. Because Plato was a realist, but it was a bit too much actually. He kind of
Was Plato the one who said man is a featherless biped?
I don't know.
Yes, that's true. He said, man is a featherless biped, and Diogenes plucks a chicken and lets the naked chicken walk around. He's like, look, it's Plato's man.
So good.
The larger point is that there is an end, and the end is coming. Entropy is happening. What will you do now with the time that you have? And the point I was stressing from Andrew Tate earlier is you have to be exceptional. You have to strive to do something, you know? Look on my work, see mighty. You got to put up the statue at least. Have something, you know, because a lot of people don't even have the two vast and trunkless legs of stone in the desert, right?
Right. And so what I think Andrew Tate is really getting at, and I think he is getting deeper, is because he's starting to get closer to the essence of man. Right. So this is like a philosophical distinction. You have substance and accidents. So like a substance is or essence. We'll say essence. An essence is like what a thing is. An accident are like qualities of that thing. So for example, if you were to dye your hair black, you don't cease to be human, right? You're still human. That's your form. That's like you are still a human being, whether you're tall or you're short, whether you have one limb or no limbs, you're still technically human, right? That's your essence. And so when we speak of, you know, there is an end coming and we have to try and make ourselves to be as good as we possibly can, as the most excellent that we can achieve in this life. Well, we have to ask the questions like, well, what are we? A phone. It's a telecommunication device.
Yeah.
Right? That's its essence. It's used to communicate. Now, technically, you could use it like a cutting board. It wouldn't be a very good cutting board. And the reason it wouldn't be a good cutting board is that it goes contrary to its telos, which is what Aristotle talks about. Its end, its finality, its purpose, right? The reason that it's been made for, right? And so you can look at a thing and you can almost, by looking at it, observing it, using it, you're like, this thing is clearly good at some things and it's not good at others, right? Use it for what it's good for. And so it's very commonsensical. You look at yourself and it's the same thing. Just like you look at a phone, just like you look at a table, just like you look at a chair, it has a clear purpose or finality or telos, right, to it. It's the same thing with the human being. And so a lot of times it's like, it seems like it's a mystery, but in some sense it's actually very obvious. Right? It's like, well, what am I good at? What is going to fulfill this end? What am I made for?
In the wider sense, we can say everybody's meaning and purpose in life, their ultimate way of becoming exceptional, is to find that in themselves, figure out what your telos is, and figure out, in so doing, you find a little aspect of God, and then within that, you find, basically, you calculate what is the meaning of life. Right, I kind of talked about that before. It's the Douglas Adams kind of computer. What is the question to the answer that is 42? Yeah. You got to calculate your piece of the question. Yeah, you know. In so doing, if we look at that, we extrapolate it into goals. Think about it. What are your ambitions? What are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? What do you believe is going to make you exceptional in this life? I think the three of us can safely say, like, we have some pretty traditional ideas in mind in terms of, like, yeah, all of us want a house and a family and whatnot. But beyond that, like, what do you envision you would like to accomplish in this life?
I think AD should start because you had quite a drive in high school for one specific goal.
Oh, to like make a movie?
No, to draw. Was it movie? You said you were drawing. Well, that's the thing. Like
Raph talked about it earlier. Like I bounced around.
Oh yeah.
I moved around.
Oh, interesting.
Right? Yeah, you think, I like doing this, maybe I'll do this and that'll make me happy, and it didn't. Or I'll do this and I'll try and that'll make me happy, and that also didn't, right? And so oftentimes, like, just because at the end of the day, I think I guess I can only speak for myself, but generally speaking, I think humans we're greedy, let's say. Right? Like, you can have it and then eventually you get bored of it,
Yeah.
Like this was like Christmas growing up, right? Like I really wanted something,
Until you got it.
and then I got it, and it didn't really do me a whole lot, right? I was bored of it after like 2 weeks. And it's the same. And to be honest, like even when it comes to things that sometimes are even a little bit more personal, I think those things last a lot longer. But even then, there's oftentimes this like desire for something more, right?
If I can help kind of reframe that, though, I think it's safe to say you're an artist. You have the drive and the mind of an artist. And whether or not they know it, the artist is always seeking what is called the magnum opus, their greatest work. You are on the journey to figuring out what that great work is. At one point, it was to get good enough at drawing so that, you could complete that work. And at other times when I'd met you, especially when we were very into film, you would have told me on multiple occasions you would like to make one film. In your life, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe that's your magnum opus.
Yeah, no, I think about that, but it doesn't like. I know, at least for myself, I know that I'll complete that magnum opus, and then finally, then I'll be happy. I mean, you don't have to wait.
Oh, I don't think that's true at all.
You don't have to wait to do the thing in order to be happy. I think you can actually achieve a lot of great happiness presently, and those things, if it's in accord with your journey, then you do them. But you don't have like I think that was the switch for me, right? Is that like I don't feel as though if I don't do that thing, I'll never be happy, because that was my mentality before. Whereas now it's like I'm gonna do that thing, but I'm happy now.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's not so much like attacking it out of a desperation.
We often conflate this idea with when we accomplish the thing, we're going to be happy.
Yeah.
That is definitely a conflation, because if you look at someone like Van Gogh, we look at Starry Night, we're like, that was an incredible work. We look at it, it's captivating, it's beautiful. We might even consider it to be his magnum opus, but the man was miserable.
What was exactly, and so an interesting thing is like, is the artist's goal to make this particular masterpiece, or is it just to be an artist? Right, just the process, right? And so there's a book even that's very trendy right now, Atomic Habits.
Oh, yeah.
A huge point of that book is it's not the end, it's the process. You have to become obsessed with the process, right? So it's like we think about ends and goals, which is good, right? But most of your time is going to be in the process. So in some sense, you kind of have to hypnotize yourself to be in love with the process and to be happy in that state, because the goal could take very, very, very long before you even see the results, right?
There is some truth to that. And I think it's the same kind of truth with like, oh, why rush to these ends? Why not just be happy in the moment? And that was definitely me when I was more Epicurean. But then as I start to think about it again, it's like, well, look, we know that the work will not survive all time. Again, Ozymandias the statue. But the process does not survive you. So the process will die when you die. If we're talking about negative entropy, you got to leave something behind. Right? Whether that is the impact you made on other people too. Because that does come from being happy in the moment. Being happy in the moment lends you the capacity to be kinder, for instance. And that kindness leaves a positive impact on people. And that certainly survives you. Right? But at the same time, it's like, if you are just being happy in the moment, that could also mean a more hedonistic style of just obtaining the pleasure out of life. That definitely doesn't survive you. That dies when you die. So what do you leave behind? I guess the magnum opus is like people's way of doing that. You look at Da Vinci's Mona Lisa. If we're talking about artists and their greatest works, you talked to me about it before, Jared. You'd seen like a documentary about the Mona Lisa and like everything that went into it, because Da Vinci, much like us in some way, he was polymathic. He had a lot of interest, a lot of phases that he went through, but the Mona Lisa was like the culmination of all of those, because he learned so many different things.
The funniest thing about the Mona Lisa on that topic is the understanding is that it wasn't even like he sat down and decided, I'm going to make the most amazing painting ever.
Yeah.
He got commissioned to, as far as we know she got commissioned to make a painting of this woman.
And he got carried away.
Yeah.
because he kept adding things. There are like parts. Apparently, there are parts to like this and other paintings that he did when he like learned something about the formation of rocks, and then he would go back and like add it to different paintings. I'm sure he did so with the Mona Lisa on many occasions. But again, it was like the culmination of his life's work. He might not even have intended to make that his magnum opus,
I
but
think
it turned
most
out into
things that become a magnum opus aren't intended to.
it. That may be true. That may be very well true. But I don't know. What is the magnum opus in your life?
The only two things that come to mind would be a family, like children.
Yeah.
And beyond that, I don't care about leaving a legacy. I don't care if people remember me. I only want them to remember Jesus. Yeah. So it's like, if people are to remember me, I want them to remember Jesus.
No. I mean, that's the kind of my point. What I was trying to say earlier is like, if you understand your purpose to be with God, then that is your final end. And so your life, your direction completely changes, right? If you understand your final purpose, like your ultimate purpose, not just like a short-term purpose, like your ultimate purpose is just to be happy. That could be a different end, right? But you know, for I think religious people, like it's usually the answer is going to be it's to be with God, right? But I know you're asking about like your
let's scale it down now,
yeah.
right? Because we're talking about the meaning of life. Let's scale down. You know, in your life, we kind of established, the family, the house, the whatever, right? Scale down a little bit more. Think about the time when you were 30. We're about 25 now, three of us. Your 5-year plan. What do you want to be when you're 30?
My like 3.5-year plan.
Oh, crap. When you're 30, what do you want your life to be like? Do you want to have accomplished something by then? And again, I'm not talking about family.
Yeah, I'm trying to get away from that because those are my only long-term goals, essentially.
well, I mean,
Like
here's the thing.
even in terms of job, I've thought about moving to botany because I love plants.
The
That
thing
would
is,
be
like,
cool.
I hear you guys talking about pursuing faith, pursuing family. The thing in my mind that brings is like, that's a great way to be good. I don't know if it's a good way to be great.
I disagree.
Well, yeah, I disagree as well. Because here's the thing. God is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. There's nothing greater than him. So to have Jesus as my legacy that I leave behind wherever I went, what could possibly be greater than that?
Allow
Everything
me to define
else,
it. What does that mean? Because if you mean like, I want to embody that to the point where I am reflecting that, again, that aspect of God into the world, and that causes me to be a very positive influence, that's great. But if I
here's-
ask you, put it on paper, what are you actually going to do?
Well, I mean,
It's
like, I can guarantee you, if you ask parents, I think the vast majority will tell you that the most important thing in their lives is going to be their family.
Yeah.
Right. So like, even like for, I have a hard time imagining where a man would put like a company or some project over his family.
Well,
And
certainly not.
if he did, I would say that's disordered. But I would never want. I mean, it's basically, by natural law, which even Aristotle would echo, but obviously Christians, it's like God first, your spouse, and then it's your family, it's your kids, right? Your parents.
Look, here's the
your
thing. This is the
friends,
reason
right?
why I kept trying to ask you guys to get away from like the simple answer of family, because obviously, it's like obviously children survive you, Vin Diesel. It's like, duh. I know. What is your 5-year plan, dummy? What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Your time is running out. Memento mori. You are gonna die.
Yeah.
And not only that, but consider that the things you guys have been talking about, they're the same things that everybody has wanted forever. They are the adequate. They are the average. They do not exceed the expectations. They are not, therefore, exceptional. But the conditions that family then grows in are still subject to the same level of entropy.
Well, in terms of like goals, because obviously raising a family, like practically speaking, like more material goals, if we want to bring it down, they would be subservient to the higher goal, which would be basically raising a good family, right, and maintaining like good relationships. I'd like to own a home. That'd be nice.
That's a really hard thing to do.
In the next 10 years, I would love to own a
least where
home.
we live.
And I actually think like it's really important to accomplishing that goal.
We definitely live in like one of the most difficult places on maybe the planet to get that
I
done.
think it's second or third in the world.
Yeah.
It's definitely number.
Vancouver.
I believe it's number 1 or 2 in Canada. Maybe next to Toronto.
Wait, it's got to be number 1 in Canada. I
It
don't even want
might-
to
it might
think
be
about
Toronto.
it.
Vancouver itself.
Yeah,
But then if you head like down the road an hour,
yeah.
if you're in Chilliwack, it's like suddenly a very achievable dream. I don't believe I will ever, well, at least like realistically striving within the next 5 years, I don't
Yeah.
believe I'm going to own a home, obviously,
Dude,
in Vancouver.
I watched some Pierre Polyev propaganda yesterday, and he mentioned that it's like, I think it was now in Vancouver, $600,000 of what your average house is worth is essentially fees that went into building it.
Yeah. No, they make it like honestly
Yeah,
very difficult.
They just, yeah, I mean, they just don't understand, or at least they don't want people to understand. It's not a mystery, like why cost keeps going, why costs keep going up. It's literally like, well, you have supply and you have demand, right? And if you increase, the supply and find a way to lower the demand, then yeah, the
Well,
prices
it's
will
not just
level
that,
out.
right? Because it
But-
would be so simple if it was just supply and demand. But we're talking about like the checks and balances that must be fulfilled along the way are also taking away.
all
gatekeepers.
of that increases the cost of supply, right? And
that's
so
true.
it actually reduces supply, right? So like my
Yeah.
brother, he works in the city of Burnaby, he's a project manager, and he tells me like, man, it's bad. Like the way projects get approved, how slow they are, the amount of red tape that they put. Of course, like it costs these developers an arm and a leg, but guess what? The developer's not going to pay for it. They're going to be like, I'm just going to offset that, and so the buyer, the people who actually buy the people who buy the home are going to be
Yeah.
the ones who actually
Working in
burden
real
that
estate,
cost.
I've come to learn the important fact that the city of Vancouver is a city for investors. It's not meant for you to own a home. It's meant for the investor to own a home and you rent from
Which
them.
is, yeah, and that's completely wrong.
It's
Like,
bonkers
that's-
because if people can't afford to actually live there, then they don't make the city worth living in,
yeah.
Yeah.
right? And then over time, it's like, well, that doesn't actually help the value either. So what are you investing in? The truth is, it's like, you shouldn't seek to own a home in Vancouver because that's not an achievable like thing
Yet
off
I
the
do.
get-go.
Well, you can.
What
You'll
you
just-
should seek to do is own a home outside of Vancouver. You could take all the advantage you want of the city without
Like
living in it.
Texas.
Owning a home is a great goal. I think people should strive to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think they should strive to do it in realistic ways. I think there are realistic ways to do it, and one of those realistic ways is definitely not
Move to
do
Medicine
it.
Hat.
Well, that's also very true. Our friend Kyle, who I hope to get in touch with later this year, is living out in Alberta, and his achievable dream of owning a home and owning land is there.
Dude, something that's worth like $2 million here is $400K there.
Yeah. Right? Well, if you want to talk about cost of living, I went down to Bellingham to visit a friend last weekend. I went down just across the border, gas is like 70 cents cheaper
Oh yeah.
What?
because
Yeah.
of the amounts of taxes that BC thinks they're saving the world with.
Oh yeah, his taxing on taxing.
Taxing on a tax. I mean, that's carbon, I guess. But yeah, owning a home is one of those goals that we all have seek to achieve. It is now a very serious goal. It is one of those things that you can't just be good anymore. You have to be great to get.
Yeah, and it's weird because I feel like with Gen Z and like the coming generations, they're like, yeah, that's never gonna. They've kind of almost given up. They've already accepted the fact that, yeah, I'll just rent my whole life. They're like, it's just
Yeah. I mean, my goal at this point isn't even to buy a house; it's to buy a condo and rent that out, because then it pays for itself, and then by the time it's finally paid off, it's now making me money, and by the time that happens, I've hopefully bought one or two more that are also paying themselves off.
No, I mean, like, well, the thing is that's one way to do it because it'll pay itself off. You'll own it, and now when you sell it, you make more money, and now
Yeah.
you can buy the next thing. That's how real estate investment has always kind of worked, right? I seek to do something similar. You know, I think there is a path to it. It's just you have to figure out what that path is. And the thing is, that path isn't always in that big city that's happening in. And if there's one thing that COVID taught everybody, is like you can actually have you can get a lot out of life in remote. You can get a lot out of life just living outside the city.
I went to Gibson's recently, and there was one restaurant open at 11:30, and it was going to close in 20 minutes, and it was a 20-minute drive to get there. Here, I can get pizza and donair whenever I want.
Because you're a vampire. You're trying to go to a restaurant at 11:30 at night
We were at a pub and they apparently closed the kitchen at 9 p.m.
because people
who the
go to
heck-
sleep.
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
If you could live forever,
Ugh.
would your goals change?
If I could live forever,
Yeah.
Would my goals change?
my
Like,
goals would just get
eventually?
bigger.
Do you mean
'Cause-
like
Because
immediately?
we're talking about memento mori, right? But let's just say
There was
you could,
no mori.
Let's just say you could live forever.
There was
What-
only Memento.
What? That's a great movie.
Oh.
What would your goals be?
My goals wouldn't change, they would just get bigger. They would just we just keep going. I'm not just gonna settle for being CEO of the company because that's doable. I'm doing it right now. I can accomplish this and make the Forest Creek great before I
Do you think
perish.
you'd get bored of that though?
Yeah. That's why I'm saying they would get bigger. It would become
Yeah.
Emperor of Earth.
Yeah.
Let's take over the whole thing.
Yeah.
It was like if I am given the providence to live forever, I'm gonna make something out of it.
I feel like I'd be a lot more okay with being homeless, actually.
Eventually, yeah. I feel like I would get bored of being the Emperor and
Yeah.
try to go back down to the bottom and start again.
Not even that, though. It's like, I'll just do the Diogenes move for a while. I'll just chill in a friggin' cardboard box.
If your goals do change, now in this hypothetical situation where you could live forever, then there's something wrong with your goal.
Interesting.
That's a good point. That's a good
Because
point.
I think you should be, whatever your goal is, it should be able to last forever.
I guess if you think about, if, again, we get back to that big quest for the meaning of life, to reach that aspect within yourself and within the world. Because of the infinite nature of God, the quest itself should be infinite. So if it changes, it's because it was limited, not infinite. I think what I want to do with the Forest Creek is I want to create a place where the artists within it can pursue the quest, and the people watching it can be along for the ride pursuing the quest. Because it is based around the quest, and the quest is infinite, my goal is infinite. So my goal does not change. It just gets bigger, like I was saying. I don't know about you guys, but it's like, how many kids can you have? He's trying to do the math now.
I'm trying to do the
I'm
math.
trying to think like Samson. He had a lot of kids.
Did Samson have a lot of kids?
Yeah, I
Wasn't it,
mean,
like, in the
Robert
Bible?
Down. What is it? Robert
Samson
Downey.
have any
Not
kids?
Robert Downey. Robert De Niro, Al Pacino. These guys are having kids in like their 70s.
Dang.
Apparently, they've accidentally.
Oops.
But again, scale it down. Well, we just talked about the house. What kind of car do you want to drive when you're 30?
Dude,
It's like if you could have your choice, what's the car of your dreams?
straight from Shinedown. A long black Cadillac.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Have you seen those freaking things?
I love Cadillacs. They're
So
amazing.
sick.
Do you mean
I
like?
love that old style sleek car with like the tail lights that poke out.
Yeah.
Oh
convertible.
yeah. Oh, you're
And
talking
then-
about like the classics.
Oh yeah, long black Cadillac, boy.
I think he
Jared's
would like.
taste in cars. Let me just to give you an idea. He was prepared to buy like a Pontiac Firebird
Yo.
from like the 1990s that
19
was
I think-
purple with flames on it.
1889, 19 something. I don't know. I have
It
no
wa-
clue.
there
1989.
was no cars.
1989. I'm,
Which
I'm
is
gonna-
like the thing is,
Listen.
Jared, do you know how to drive stick shift?
No, I'll figure it out.
It's not that. Okay, whatever.
Google
but, I mean, you could try,
Yeah.
but
Either way, Pontiac Firebird,
knowing you, that's like definitely your brand too. I would say.
a Pontiac.
Well, yeah, Pontiac Firebird.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that
Firebird
style
specifically,
is
with
like
the
I would not.
Flames going down the side, big Firebird on the front. Yo.
If Jared's got money, I can see him in a Crown Vic.
I would probably drive like. I
Let
don't
him
know,
stop typing, right? Because this is noisy.
Yo.
a Ford
heck yeah.
Crown Victoria. That's actually pretty sick.
Yeah,
Oh
dude.
my gosh.
Named after the Queen herself.
Wow.
Classy. I like the older style cars. They had like the metal ball. They're heavy, but man,
Yeah,
they,
dude, like a muscle car.
I mean, if you scratch it, you can just buff it out. You know.
But yeah, no, I mean, I could see you in one of these cars.
Yes. Who
Personally-
needs aerodynamic,
Dude, Olin style.
shapes or contours?
Oh
I-
yes.
I
Oh
think-
yeah.
Man, that's like Karate Kid vibes.
Jared with a lot of money, I feel like Rolls Royce.
Yeah, that would be
You
pretty sweet.
like in
I
the
knew a guy in
millionaire
high
world.
school who was like at 15, 16, he was like Rolls Royce, best car.
It's
no
the
doubt.
it's quite literally it's the most luxurious car.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the smoothest car too. They have like this insane suspension system, and like you could be driving on gravel, like the bumpiest roads, and it just absorbs almost 100% of
be
the
amazing.
impact.
It's kind of like how Rolex is famous for not having a tick, right? The
Oh,
watch
okay.
hands, they just roll. The gears
Yeah.
are smooth. The same deal with the Rolls Royce.
Oh my
Just,
gosh, it's
you
in the
know,
names.
Roll slow. It's just a smooth ride. It's a cruise, right? I get that a lot when I drive like newer cars, or I sit there and like their steering is like so soft and like almost airy that you feel like you're just sailing
Yeah.
almost. But like if I was to scale it up, it's like, well, the car of my dreams is the McLaren P1.
Yeah.
I love McLaren. I love the style of the cars. The McLaren P1 though is one of those like limited edition cars. They only make a few of them. The one car is like $500,000, and you have to get like $1.5 million to get the McLaren P1, and you have to get it like on a list, and then you get the
Oh
opportunity
my
to buy it.
gosh, you get the
You
opportunity.
get the opportunity to buy a McLaren P1 because this is a car that's more for the track than it is for the road.
Yeah.
To be honest, you can take it on the road. A step down from that, the McLaren 720S, $300,000. It's like if I reach that multimillionaire status, which I hope to one day, that's the car I
You're
aspire
not gonna
to.
go Bugatti.
They look the Bugatti's nice. There's like a thing to it of being like the rich enough to have the Bugatti. I don't love it. It doesn't
It's mid.
speak to me. It doesn't speak to me in the way that the McLaren does.
Yeah.
There's like other, people talk about the big argument in the car world is Ferrari versus Lamborghini. Because a Ferrari is like this prestigious, well-engineered machine that people love to drive. But the community around it is, because it's so prestigious, they're kind of like
They're pretentious.
pretentious. That's the word.
That's the whole point of driving these nice cars.
Lamborghini, on the other hand, the community around it, the people who drive it, it's all about fun. It's like, I don't know enough to say that the Lamborghini is a better machine than a Ferrari, but it's like the community around it. But then take that a step down. It's actually a lot of the realtors that I work around, my boss, people around him, they drive Porsches. I think a Porsche is a sweet car.
Yeah.
I love like the way it looks when I walk past it in the parking lot every day. It gives me that little boost of motivation to be
Dude,
like, one day.
even old low-level Porsches are awesome. I didn't know that was a thing until my buddy in high school bought one for his first car, and I was like,
Wow.
he said he brought a Porsche. I was like, you bought a freaking Porsche?
Yeah.
It was some used thing from the 80s or 90s or something.
Dude, when you look at a Porsche from the 90s, it's like, that's a sweet ride.
Dude, this guy's car looked freaking beautiful, and it was probably a few thousand.
Yeah.
I was like, what the heck?
Well, it's like the Porsches, like all these car companies, like those scale upwards. You can get
Yeah,
a Porsche that's
yeah.
like crazy in its price, right? My boss loves the Porsches. Like he gets the new one, right? But you can scale it down. You can get one for a Porsche from 2009. It's still a sweet ride,
Yeah.
It's scalable. I think a Porsche is something I can aspire towards. I don't have to be the millionaire to get it, but I can aspire towards it. I think what I drive right now, I drive a Honda Civic. I like this car. I'm super comfortable in it. If I drove the Honda, if I could reach all my goals, but I had to drive the Honda Civic for the rest of my life, I'd be okay with it.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's got a great speaker. There's Bluetooth. I'm happy.
That's all that matters.
It's got that VTEC. Can beat a Lamborghini any day.
I know one thing. It's like it's becoming more and more popular to switch towards electric cars. I'm not on board. I'm not on board with electric. Just I think some of these hybrid engines having the battery. If you're just going out to do groceries and you don't want to waste your gas tank on it, it's like I get it. My dad drives a Ford Fusion. It's like that's a cool car. I like the idea of the
It is a
utility
cool
of
car. Yeah, but like hybrids, I mean, in one sense they're stupid because it's double the weight. You have an electric, motor, and then you have a combustion engine, and then you have a battery, and you have the gas tank. Like it's, pick one. You know what I mean? But the Prius found a way to make it reliable, cheap, and efficient.
the Prius.
I mean, you gotta give them credit. Like, I thought hybrids, I'm like, there's no way this is gonna be successful.
Is
It's
that
just too much weight.
Is that the
right?
car of your dreams, the Prius?
It's not the car of my dreams, but in terms of
Yeah, it is.
saving money on gas, you're not gonna find a car that's better
Talk
than
to
the Prius.
Kyle about his new Ford.
The Ford, I mean, the problem with Ford is like that car is probably going to be good for 5 years.
Dream with me then, Andres. What is the car of your dreams?
If money is not
No
an
object. Like,
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
start out
Train.
with it's no object.
Okay, so I like classic cars. I'd probably be one of those guys. I'm not crazy about the newer kind of styles. I kind of like the more classic stuff. I like Lexus, actually. I really like Lexus cars. They're really nice.
What about a PT Cruiser?
Porsche are very smooth.
Yeah.
Like they're
think we're in
very
agreement on the
smooth.
Porsches.
I'd probably get maybe some Porsches. A Rolls Royce would be sick too because they're just
PT
again.
Cruiser.
But I personally, I actually think I'd go for the classics. I just think they're cool.
You know what I like about a lot of the classics, even the collector's classic cars, they're actually not that expensive. My dad had it a little while ago. We had a 1967
Yeah,
VW Bug. I
was
learned to
dope.
drive stick shift on that sucker.
You guys sold it?
Under $10,000.
Dude, they sold it like 2 years ago. Really?
I never drove in
It's not an expensive car.
Wow.
How did it drive?
Well, it
Like a
drove like a
boat?
go-kart.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it drove like,
a boat.
like a stick shift go-kart, dude.
Here's the thing. I want one of these cars, this Queen Victoria or something old like that, like a long black Cadillac.
Yeah.
But I want a new engine. I don't care about the old parts. I care about the skin.
Oh.
Give me a sleeper car.
It's funny, I think
So
that...
just stick a Corolla engine, ACE in transmission, so it's
Boom.
reliable, and
Oh,
then boom.
I
you got
forgot
a
to
classic
That's
mention-
what I
car.
want.
my one
It
honorable
won't
mention before we'll move on is I've always loved Aston Martin.
I think they're
can't
so
put a-
overrated.
I can't put a
think
face to the
they're
name.
so overrated.
The James Bond cars.
Overrated.
I never really saw those movies.
Wow. But I'm not talking about the new one. I'm talking about like the old, like the DB5 and stuff like that. Like,
Even then, overrated.
wow. I think it's a great
Fire
look on a car.
No, it looks
It's
cool.
really
It looks
yeah.
cool. I like the Gran Torino, Ford. Ford used to make good cars. I don't know what happened to Ford, and all the General Motors companies. Cars these days are so
We could
ugly.
spend the whole episode talking about cars, but we talk about 5 years. By the
Mazda
time you're
Miata.
by the time you're 30,
Yeah.
time you're 30, what would you like to drive? I
A
think the
Mazda
Porsche.
Miata.
Oh, dang. What would I like to drive when I'm 30?
By the time I'm 30, I feel like the Porsche is not an unreachable goal.
Shoot, I haven't thought about this at all. I
I'll
haven't
probably
gone-
be driving a Toyota Rav. Probably a Sienna. or
That's
maybe,
'cause-
maybe a Sienna if I have a lot of kids.
That's because you're leaving the Forest Creek.
Honestly, this Ford Fusion. Dude,
Honestly, yeah, that's a
it's
pretty
from my
great.
grandma. I love it.
If I had this Honda Civic by the time I'm 30, I just don't want it to be my only car.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You want a motorcycle?
Well, yeah, that's a definite for me. I don't think it'll be a Ducati for me.
Would you ever get a
I've always eyed the Honda Rebel.
He wants a Yamaha.
No. I like Honda because Honda's engines and their power units are pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I don't think like Yamahas are pretty great too. It's like we had a Yamaha jet ski, Yamaha boats, stuff like that. I don't want to. I know the thing is Harley Davidson, but it's like you have to really, really love motorcycles. I just want a fun machine. I just want a fun machine for a sunny day. I don't need to spend hours in
Yeah.
the garage on this.
See, I've never cared for getting a motorcycle, but if I was gonna get one, I'd want to almost be lying back and reaching way up for my handles.
I'll tell you, those bikes are not as comfortable as they look. I think it's like just riding the Honda Rebel is like when I got to sit on it and I got to ride it around, the most comfortable bike I've ridden.
What about a moped with a souped-up engine?
One of the bikes I've loved the most have been Suzuki M50 the Boulevard. I loved it. It was like big. The guy had modded the exhaust pipe and stuff, so it was even louder, but and kind of like fitted to be a bobber, and it was like a lot of fun. But so moving on a little bit, because like we talked about, it's like what are some things you want to do when you're 30? How do you experience? What do you think your day to day is going to be
One
like?
thing I actually really like, I heard this quote about essentially what it is to become 30, is you get the fruits of your labors. What decisions did you make in your 20s that went poorly? What decisions went right? Where did things... Now you see the results of all this stuff.
You have 3 decades to look back on. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's fair to say,
mostly one.
if I was to sketch it out for myself, I'm driving a car I like. I'm with the wife and kids. I am paying the mortgage living in the house. I am working for myself for my own company. I've stopped working for other people. These are things that I want to be at when I'm 30. I want to be living comfortably. I want to be providing for the family. At 5 years, I think I could strive towards those things. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I've never specifically, it's always more been pipe dream thought process of the Forest Creek making it and becoming crazy successful. But
I think that's 35. I don't think.
I don't know, maybe 40 or 50. But I think that would be pretty sweet. But I also lean towards, because I'm kind of a lazy, relaxing person at heart, and so I'd like to get to a point in a position where the company can live without me, but I still make money off it.
You always think I'm going to keep you around when you're dead weight.
I want to put my feet up on a table and smoke a cigar.
You can do that for
get me that cut by the end of the week.
You can do it like once a week, but the other parts of the week you're going to be scrambling to get that cut yourself.
As long as I'm doing it for the entire length of the cigar.
That's a lot of time, though.
That's like 2.5, 3 hours.
I ain't paying
I
you for
smoke
that.
slow.
AD, what do you think you'd like your life to be like when you're 30?
I would very much like to own a home. So I have plans to purchase a home potentially in 2023. I might have to push it to 2024, but it's tough because right now, just as well, I'll make it quick, but because they thought inflation peaked, right?
Everybody's like, it's gonna cool down any second now.
Literally for years.
And it didn't. And so
Hold on. Are we talking about Justin inflation TM? The term coined by Pierre Polyev famously, but not actually.
Right.
I think that actually, I'm not even sure that was Pierre. That was
No, it wasn't, but he claims it, which is the best part. Do you still want to be doing IT at Cobb's?
No, probably not, unless I move up to like a better. I actually really like working for them. I have a great manager, really good support team, and I think they're an honest and they're a good company to work. I'm actually like honestly pretty happy with them, but I wouldn't want to be in the same position. If I'm still there, I definitely have to be like manager or somewhere.
You need like a senior or manager or director
maybe like
in your title.
Because they're trying to expand in the States, and so there is probably going to be more, openings and stuff. But like, if I'm still there, there's no way I'm in the same position. It has to be something different and that's just for like my own sanity. Like I want to learn things, right? But yeah, like right now, because I think hopefully by 2023, 2024, I can hopefully buy a home. But the problem right now is interest rates, right? Because right now this is really strange space in the real estate market where, because they raised interest rates and that like completely killed the real estate market like 6 months ago, and now it's like there's a second wave of inflation. The Bank of Canada might raise it again, in which case it's going to completely kill the real estate market again. So hopefully 2023, 2024 can maybe get a home, and then by 30 have a bigger home, a nicer home. I don't know, that'd be good, because like the initial home is not going to be like, it won't even be a single home. It'll probably be either a condo or it's going to be
townhouse,
like a townhouse or a duplex.
Townhouses are dope.
Yeah, but like nice. I don't have an issue with that. I could live in a townhome to the day I die. It's not, unless I mean, the only thing that would make it really terrible is strata.
Oh yeah.
And then neighbors, really bad neighbors. That would make it really difficult. But if those things are fine, then yeah.
I picture you, working still IT. You're just in charge of the department. You wear glasses now for some reason. But if we take that down, all right, let's scale it down again, because we went from meaning of life to 5 years from now. We went to meaning of life, greatest ambitions. 5 years from now, 1 year from now.
Oh gosh.
What's your life like in 1 year? Me in 1 year, I'm not sure if I'll still be at the same company, but I do know that the Forest Creek, I want to grow it so that we're actually, we're servicing people. We're extended now. We're helping people.
Premiering our first film.
That's actually pretty big. I think short film is doable.
Premiering our first short
full film. What do you mean hour? You won't even be here.
Yeah, trader.
I'll visit a lot.
To get nothing
With
done
what
while
gas?
you are here. But yeah, I mean, like growing the company to the point where we're actually going out there and we're helping people. We're on the quest, because we're doing that now. We're helping people, but we're doing it in a way that's getting us off the ground. I want to be self-sufficient in helping people. I want to be expanding to the point where we're starting to grow our crew a little bit more. That's my aspirations for a year from now. To live in a home that I am at least, well, I won't 100% own it, but to live in a home that I bought, that is definitely in line there.
In 1 year?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, I mean, I'm
You must
working
be
at
loaded.
it. Working at it. To, get a foothold in that starting a family thing, at least like to be on that path, that would be nice. I do know in 1 year from now, like, physical fitness is something I've been like trying to battle, and I'm finally starting to make a little bit of progress. It's slower than I thought. I think in 1 year I could actually achieve those goals. To put it in perspective, one time I lost a ton of weight because I did like a keto super restrictive diet. I got really thin. I went from 220 down to 190. Lost 30 pounds. Since then, I had gained it back up to the point where the heaviest I ever was 230. That was 230 in the end of 2022. I have managed, and we'll talk about this more, but I've managed to lose weight down to 210 now.
Hey, without keto.
Without keto. There has been like some fasting going on. There's been lots of working out. There's been lots of ups and downs.
But it's more lifestyle building as opposed to 3-6 month diet.
Yes. So I'm down to 210. My hope is I think the ideal weight for me is I'd like to be below 190 and just stay there. Be at a healthy pace there. I think that's doable there. The difference between then and now is actually like, I think part of my 210 right now is I've actually put on muscle. Along with that. So
definitely.
To keep the muscle and to keep the tone and the definition and to keep some of the bulk, but then lose the fat, be down below 190, that's part of the goals. To be making money to the point where like I'm living comfortably, to be able to travel a little bit, that would be nice. Because right now it's like I don't have the time to travel. I also don't have the money because I have some goals I'm working towards.
Yeah.
Getting that home, for instance. Within 1 year, I'd like to have the money to be like, oh, I guess I will take a trip and go somewhere. That would be nice. So there's that. I hope to maintain the car still for that 1 year. That's something. But again, the main thing I think about is I'd like the Forest Creek to be something that can be out there helping people and growing. That is one big thing for me. I don't know. What do you think about 1 year, Jared?
Fit and a colorist. Hopefully with a girlfriend.
You hear that?
The
Anybody
foothold.
listening?
Hey.
That's what I'm talking about. The
Shameless
foothold,
plug.
right? To have the foothold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Closer to Jesus would be a good one. Like more solid in a faith and spiritual routine.
I get the feeling that's going to happen no matter what you do.
It's pretty difficult actually. It's like fitness is actually a lot easier because it's defined. I can look up a routine, but I'm finding it a lot harder to look up a solid prayer routine or something like that. That's not just, I don't know, repeating the same thing, because it's difficult in the faith that I learned in prayer. It's much more spontaneous. There's no repeated prayers. The only one I know is the Jesus prayer, and I got that from Andres.
I don't know.
I'd like to be a colorist as well.
When I look at spiritual goals, I find them kind of funny because like I always think like I'd like to be more unplugged. I'd like to look at the rock and just see a rock sometimes. I feel like I think about this stuff too much where it's like I almost never feel disconnected from the spiritual world. I don't mean to make that sound like I'm holy or something.
No. Yeah, I like that's an idea I actually got from reading Job that I really liked, because the first 2 chapters of Job basically says that he's Jesus. It like not actually, but it's like he's literally perfect. He never sins.
Yes,
So-
and then everything goes wrong.
Yeah, and so I took that as okay. He never sins even through this whole thing. They specify that even through all of the crap that happens to him, he is still sinless. Up until the point where he's covered in sores and his wife is like, "You need to abandon God," and he loses everything. It's up to that point he's still sinless. The rest of the book is him complaining, and one part I love is that he says he wishes he could get away from God for even a moment. He's like, just leave me alone. But he's so aware and connected to God that even when he doesn't want to know God is there, he knows God is there.
Yeah, I don't go saying I'm holy. I just say
Yeah.
I think about this all the time.
Yeah.
I'd like to stop thinking about
It's
it.
pretty easy for
I
me.
don't feel myself disconnected in the sense that I'm not praying enough, because I like consider even that a lot of my passing thoughts are prayers. So I just You know, I don't really think about prayer routine. I just think about it something organically that happens.
Yeah.
But I guess in terms of like, if I was to say growing spiritual, growing in faith, I'd like to be someone who can embody more of the strength and kindness. And when I say strength, I mean that in the sense that, like, I mean, we've read it in Musashi, or at least in Vagabond, where they go, the true mark of someone who is strong is kindness.
Yeah.
So I'd like to be kind because I am strong.
Yeah.
And that is one thing I would like to embody, and that I consider that part of spiritual growth. Being someone who is more stoic, better able to embody the ideals and the values that I've come to accept. So that's definitely something. And, you know, wisdom is always growing.
Yeah.
I don't know. AD, 1 year from now, what would you like to be in 1 year?
Gay.
I always joked.
As in
it's
happy?
not Catholic, it's gay.
Well, the word, its original definition.
Oh man, here we go.
It's
Controversial.
happy. It just means happy.
Controversial.
I agree. C.S.
happy.
Lewis. They called all the Narnia kids gay all the time. He didn't mean that Susan was a lesbian.
I want to be gay, but like Narnia gay.
That's pretty gay, dude.
But Peter and Edmund.
They were so gay.
Owning a home would be nice. I'd like to be potentially, you know, married.
What? Huh?
Shackled. Shackled.
The old ball and chain.
I think that those are pretty big ones. So I'll stick with those. And obviously, yeah.
You want to be Hank Hill?
Do you want to be able to mow a lawn and say that it's yours in a year?
Dude, that's the dream.
I want to have a barbecue.
Oh,
Forget
propane?
about the lawn. I want
Propane?
a barbecue in my own patio.
Propane?
I mean, we could do that. You would get you a Traeger. You could stand outside in that
Propane?
little alleyway.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think spiritually, yeah. I think having a more disciplined prayer routine would be good.
Before we go down to what the 6-month thing is, before the end of this year,
Gosh.
Amor fati. Love thy fate is the meaning of that in Latin. It's another one of those Stoic totems, those
Yeah.
phrases. Whatever you intended for it to happen as your goal, however you intended to become exceptional, things happen outside of your control. But you have to learn to accept them, to adapt to them, to learn from them, to see them as, okay, what was the challenge that I just went through? We talked a little bit in Stoicast about how the obstacle is the way. Well, the obstacle is definitely part of the way, whether or not it is the end. Right? I'll give you a great example. I intended to get a lot off the ground with the Forest Creek and get our services launched. I've said it at the end of every podcast. Our website's coming, or something like that. But the beginning of this year, I helped my parents renovate our house. It took 4 months of work. Even now, we're still doing things here and there. We still got things to touch up. It took so many of my hours. It put things in my way. The power was being cut out at me at some points, and like I would get home and not be able to work on the Forest Creek because I have to help paint something. I have to help move furniture. We got to do stuff. That was part of my fate. It was part of my fate to see I have these huge marketing goals I want to meet for Q1. Obviously not. I have these ambitions, even now, I have ambitions for what I want to get done before the end of Q2, but lo and behold, we're almost done in Q2, and the truth is that I've had to deal with a lot of things at work. I've had to help my career grow in ways that have required a lot of time and attention and energy from me that I haven't been able to put towards the Forest Creek. There was a month that I'm sure you can track in this podcast where less episodes came out because I was just either too burnt out or too busy. And throughout that process, I've learned a lot about managing energy and managing burnout. When I was younger, I used to just, and this was something I noticed about myself, especially when I first started my job here with the real estate company, I would just throw myself at a problem and just do it. And because I did that whole self-commitment towards it, I could move mountains. I could do pretty amazing things. But the truth is that I was burnt out as heck at the end, and I wasn't able to pick myself back up, and it would lead into periods of self-indulgence. Because I'm like, oh, I did it. I persevered. I can now treat myself. And then the treating yourself would just take too long. So I've learned, okay, maybe don't throw yourself like an idiot at this problem until it's solved.
Yeah.
Because you're in this for the long haul. The ambitions, they do stretch out 5 years, 10 years, your whole life. You know? They can't just be this 1 month stretch. They can't be a week of working really hard. Because it's about consistency more than it is about this burst of energy. I think the burst of energy is important. Sometimes you do come across those moments where you do need to tackle the problem. But I've learned a lot more about the pacing. You know, the goal, the truth is, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It'll have parts of it that will require you to run up this hill as fast as you can so you can keep on with the race. It's not just the race, it's the marathon. You got to keep running. So that was one big thing I've learned. Just like this weight thing. When I first started losing weight, the truth is the first 10 pounds come off quick. And anybody who can tell you that when they start trying to seriously lose weight, the first 10 pounds is like a combination of water. It's the type of fat that will burn off very easily as soon as you start changing your diet. If you go into a calorie deficit, you're going to notice the first 10 pounds off really quickly. And it'll be very encouraging. But then after you do that, you'll hit this plateau of like, now you're in the grind. And when you do that, it can get discouraging. I learned that. I went from 230 to 220. I was like, heck yeah, I did it. I did that really quickly, it felt. Because I could look at the scale and be like, I lost something every day. Now I battle the scale every week for like a pound or two. And then I'll go out over the weekend and be like, I did it. I'm going to have this sandwich. And lo and behold, I ruined everything. So that has been a tug of war. And my weight and the fitness has become a big part of that because it's the easiest way to kind of track my overall progress as a person. If I'm being disciplined, I'll manage my time better, I'll fit in the workout, I'll not eat more properly. But if I'm not being disciplined, like, it all falls apart. I think we talked about it before. It's like the 7 deadly sins, they all hold hands. The virtues also hold hands. When you manage your time well and you're disciplined, you don't eat too much, you work out, you fit in the time to do your work and all that stuff. You also have to give yourself a bit of breathing room, is what I've learned, because if you don't do that, you will burn out. And then you'll pick up one of the sins and then all 7 of them. Right? So, but the thing is about the weight in particular is like when you get up in the morning and you look in the mirror, you see it, you make contact with it right then and there. If I don't look good, I'll feel bad. If I feel bad, I'll do worse. If I look a little better, I'll feel a little bit more encouraged to push forward. I've been trying to do as much as I can to eat light, eat less, because I'll feel lighter and more energetic. When you eat, you feel tired. It's just natural. But that is one thing I've battled the most in like the 6 months. I've come to love the fate because it taught me things. I hope I can continue to learn from them and actually improve on it. Because it's always been the battle. I find myself, when I am in church, I take the opportunity to pray and be like, forgive me for failing. Because last week I asked you I wanted to be worthy of doing great things, and I failed. Help me try again. But then I find myself coming back the next week and saying the exact same thing. I want to do better so that I don't feel as bad every time I do that. So that I can look and see the progress. So that I can stay ahead. And it's up, you know, I think I've taken these first 6 months and I've learned where the pitfalls are, where the traps are, where I will fall out of grace, as it were. But it's a matter now of improving on it. And I think I can meet my goal within the rest of this year if I really truly learn and apply that learning. And the same is true of all the other things, like whether it's time management for the stuff I'm doing for the Forest Creek and prioritizing things correctly, whether it's trying to be more patient with people and to be more kind, or whether it's like, hey, I'm not going to play video games right now. I'll actually pick up the guitar. I'll read a little bit more. I have a few books. I've accumulated like 7 or 8 books. I want to get through them before the end of the year. Hopefully.
I think the biggest thing I've actually learned was actually in the last few days, which was that being inside all the time is like, it leads to short-term thinking, which leads to impulse decisions, which leads to worse feeling.
Can you expand on that? Like, what does it mean? How does being inside lead to these things?
I don't know. I literally don't know, because all I know is that when I'm inside, I'm perfectly fine with lazing around, not washing the dishes. I'll order a pizza. I'll play video games. I'll do whatever. But as soon as I go outside, and like those thoughts will plague me, and then I'll think of problems and I'll build anxiety for myself. But as soon as I go outside, I don't need the pizza. I'm walking around. I can't play video games because I'm outside. And I'm not even thinking about it. I'm thinking about long-term goals. I'm starting thinking a year down the road. I'll start thinking about the Forest Creek, thinking about my work and where I want to go. I'll think about God. I don't know why, but the physical space turns into a mental space. So if I'm in a little box of my basement, I will mentally be in a little box. But if I'm outside, above ground, with no limits around me, then mentally I am in the same spot.
That's an interesting way to put it.
It's really weird. I've even had it at work because I've been coloring this last week, and I've been so extremely frustrated with this footage because it's so awful, but it's also good. Like, it's professional red camera footage, but that can be shot poorly.
What's interesting is that, like, I was thinking about this earlier today. It's like when I hear you talking about work, it's something negative.
That's something I've picked up from working at this job.
Yeah, it sounds to me like the profession is like, what kind of problems are we running into?
Well, I mean, that kind of is every profession.
Yeah.
Because if you're not running into the problems, then everything's going smoothly, everything's perfectly fine.
I think the corporate environments that I've been working in, the opposite effect has almost been like, it should always be about what the can-do positive thing is, right? It's not about... Like, maybe it's the boss's job to be negative about some things.
Here's the thing. It's because you hear me complaining about footage all the time, and it's not necessarily complaining. It's I'm looking at, this is noisy, this is blown out, this is crushed. It's simply stating facts that happen to be, it's like, this is why the footage is bad.
Yeah.
But there's no point in saying, there's no noise right there.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you...
There's no statement, there's no green flag here.
Yeah.
I guess the difference is like...
I make my adjustments and I move on.
Because I think it's like, because your job is to look at things and clean them up.
And flag them.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't need to flag something that's not an issue. People will yell at me.
My job is to be like, is to create. So I'm told, do this thing, and the best thing I can do is say yes and then do it.
Yeah.
So my job is like a lot of positive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, AD, amor fati.
Actually, yeah, I like what Jared said in terms of space, because I've been dealing with a lot of, like, not really having my own space for a while, so, and moving, having my own space and making it my own. And then, well, obviously you have to take responsibility for it, but I think that would be it, because at that point...
Do you also work in a dark room and then live in a basement? That's what I'm sorry. That's just the idea I have of what Jared does.
No, that's just literal. That's what I was doing today. I was working in a dark room for 8 straight hours, and then I came. Now I'm in a basement. That's all lit up because of all my plants.
That's why you're a vampire. You're like thinking about where can I get donuts at 3 a.m.
I wake up at 5 a.m. No joke.
Wow, David Goggins.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wish I was Jocko, waking up at 4:30.
What do you recall? What your goals were when you started out this year?
But I think they're pretty much the same that I mentioned earlier, which is eventually have my own space, and then married. So I think it was pretty much, if I recall, I didn't write it down though, and that's probably the problem, because when you make a goal, you have to be precise. I think if the goal is too general, you're likely to not succeed, because you don't... Well, if it's general, then you can't really fail in some sense, right? Because it's too general. It's like, this year I want to be nicer. Well, that's so general. Like, there's no way to measure that.
What I say is like you gotta have a smart goal.
Well, you have to be precise, right?
Well, because it's like, in terms of nicer, it's like, okay, well, nicer means less bad. So what are the bad things and how can you cut them out?
And that's exactly it. You have to identify.
Or even more good. What are the good things you're not doing that you could do?
Yeah. So like, or this is an easier example. It's like, oh, I want to make more money. Well, it's like, how much? Right.
Well,
so like, if you make a very specific goal, like
get a
if you
green
say,
crayon.
if you're let's say you're making 50K, it's like by the end of 2023 I will be at 80K. That's a very precise goal, and you can measure exactly how much you're failing. So if you're, let's say by the end of the year you're at 60, then you know you missed your goal by 20K.
Yeah.
So it's like it's the precision that allows you to know whether you're on track or whether you're moving away from your goals. But leaving everything kind of general just leaves it imprecise. And if it's imprecise, then there's no clarity. You can't really see where you're going. It's hard. You have to take the time to really like think hard, and especially like having dates. Like being married, you can make a concrete like date. It's like by this date, you know, or owning a home, it's like by this date, you know. It's so that's better, because then you can plan, you know. You can actually move towards that. It's like, imagine if you're driving in a car, you have no destination, you're just gonna waste gas.
Yeah.
You're like,
Joyride.
I think I'm gonna head up north. Where? Just north.
Well, it's like, what do they say about goals? They have to be like trackable, achievable. You have to have milestones along the way you can hit, and stuff like that.
You know, it's a thing, an old Peterson thing he said that's about this, is people don't like to set goals because exactly what you said. You know how much you failed. When you have a specific goal, like extra 30K a year, you know exactly how much you failed.
If you never wanted to succeed.
Boom. If the goal is to fail, did you succeed or fail?
Can you think about things that happened to you this year that kept you short of your goals, AD?
That's a good question.
Far back.
Probably like wasting time on my phone.
Oh man.
Way too much time on my phone, or
I
just
was
like things that are not. Yeah, they don't really have any.
I always get like a little
in the long run.
When I've just turned away from the Discord where I've like asked you to do something, and then I look at my phone and there's like a thing you shared me on Instagram. I'm like, I know he hasn't.
I always find it funny because you'll send a message to him in Discord and he'll respond to a different server's message in Discord and not yours in the Forest Creek.
I feel like sometimes I wonder, is he deliberately doing this to piss me off?
100%. That's when I know, because it's like, if you're on Instagram, it's like, oh, maybe he swiped the notification or he's saving it for later. But as soon as you respond to something on Discord that isn't him, I know for a fact you've seen the notification and you know it's there. And you can respond to it because you sent a meme in Discord 2 minutes ago.
Sometimes I sit back and I'm like, just one more month, he'll be gone.
And then I'll start ignoring you.
I'll fire you eventually. There's not going to be any feet up on the desk, cigar man. That's not going to happen. What is the exceptional version of yourself? I like this in the Promethea books I'd lent to you at one point. There's a part of the story in this graphic novel series written by Alan Moore. There's a part of the story where the characters travel through the different realms of the afterlife, and eventually they reach one of the realms that we would call heaven. And they meet a guardian angel. And as soon as the character sees her guardian angel, she just bursts into tears, because she recognizes that her guardian angel was the best version of herself. I think about it, like, maybe that best version of yourself, that's what you could seek to become. Maybe that's that little aspect of God in you, right? The guardian angel, the best version of yourself, that's you who were when you weren't exceptional. If you can strive to be better than good, to be great, what do you think that person is like?
I can talk about different aspects and give actual examples, because physically, Juji Mufu. Dude, 200-something pounds of muscle, doing backflips and splits. That's it.
Wow.
It's quite the fitness goal.
That's the dream. I'm never gonna hit it. I don't want to be as like muscularly massive.
I don't see you doing splits, to be honest.
I could. Well, that's
I
because.
hope you figure it out now just to prove me wrong, but in demeanor, do you have anything past the bulging, rippling muscles?
Demeanor?
Yeah. What's that person like?
Huh. More serious?
More serious?
Yeah. That was a little word I felt I got from God a few years ago that I never really did anything with. The story behind that actually is I was leaving church.
And then I yelled at you.
No. No, it was actually as I was leaving. It was this massive church that I'd never been to before. But this, as I was leaving, because my friends were waiting in the car for me because I'd stayed back for whatever reason. I go right out the door, to the lobby, and some woman faints, but I don't know what she's doing. And my immediate thought was, oh, she's showing her friend something, I don't want to ruin it. So I freaking sidestepped her when I was in the perfect position to just catch her. And instead I sidestepped and she slams her head into the ground.
Oh man.
Yeah.
What a Samaritan moment right there.
And I was like, I can no longer do anything here. And I just left. But I was like, dang, man, if my instinct was not, oh, I don't want to ruin a joke or something like that, but instead, lady is falling, I need to catch her, boom. Would have been better if I was more serious.
I think it's interesting you say that, because, like, anybody who looks at you does not... Serious is not the thing that comes to mind.
Thank you.
I mean that, like, in a good way, because it's lighthearted, it puts people at ease. Like, people don't feel anxious around you. And I think that's great to some level. But then I think about it, it's like, okay, if I'm going to walk into a corporate office and pitch this to pitch something to a tech company, I'm worried about bringing Jared. I'm worried about bringing this hippie. You're kind of a goof. It's like, and it's got its benefits, and it's got its this, I don't know that you know how to act around these situations. It's like when the stakes are really high. Because I'm pretty confident in myself to be serious and, like, conduct myself in these situations. But then it's like we talked about this a little while ago with, like, dress code. It's like I didn't know I actually had to tell you what to do in this situation, because I didn't understand that, like, if I didn't, you would show up in a flowery kimono and a tank top. That blew me away. I was like, what the heck happened? I was, like, there in a collared shirt. I wasn't super professionally dressed, but I was, like, cleaning like smart casual.
You know what's interesting about that moment? I told you I didn't think, but that's actually not true. In terms of my dress, it was, I didn't know what to wear exactly in terms of, like, the specific shirt, and I knew what I wanted to wear, and I started getting frustrated because I was running out of time, and I'm more concerned with punctuality than I am dress code. So I was far more concerned with being on time, if not early, like I was, than I was wearing the correct thing.
Let's like, just because we can tell the story really quickly. It was the final talk that Father AP was doing. You can check out our podcast with him, number 14. It was the final talk he was giving to our church community before he left to LA. Yeah. And I invited you to join us. Yeah. And my church is a pretty conservative church. People show up there, people show up clean, pressed clothes. We're not talking about, like, I think there's a vision of it that people see in, like, Catholic churches, for instance, where everybody's dressed like their Sunday best, tucked shirts, and it's all dress shirts.
Everybody
and, like,
was dressed pretty normally.
People were dressed pretty normally, but it was, like, collared. It was, like, good clothes. It was professional. It was modest. Yeah. And I invited you. I thought you would kind of get the hint and come in, like, a polo shirt or something. And when you showed up, I was like, it was in my head. It was like it was bothering me the whole time I was there, because you showed up.
Because partway through his speech, you turned to me and said, "Do you have anything else you can wear?" And I was like, "Oh no, he's just been thinking about this the whole time, and it's all he's gonna think about the rest of the time." I was like, "No, I didn't bring a freaking change of clothes. What are you talking about?"
It was, because I didn't anticipate. Like, first off, you already stand out. You're, like, the only white guy there, and you're pretty tall, and then you have long flowing hair, and then the choice of outfit was the long flowy kimono with, like, swans and flowers on it. Kimono, not like you picked, like, a kimono. And then underneath that, it wasn't like a t-shirt, because, like, a t-shirt would have been fine if you just took off the coat and you just had a t-shirt. It was a tank top, and I was like, oh no, what's going, this is gonna stick out like a sore thumb. It's like, it's one thing to be, if, hey, this sweater you picked had a stain on it. Yeah. That's, like, one thing. But this was like, there's no hiding. What I do. It's like, and it's very clear. It's like, you're following me around.
I was literally asking for you.
And like, I remember asking you, was like, as I was walking, I was looking up and down. I was like, I didn't explode then, but I was like, this is not good. This is what you chose. And we sat through the thing, and it's like, I was trying to listen to the talk, but it was also bothering me the whole time. Yeah. And I did turn over. I was like, maybe there's luck in this. And then you didn't have anything else.
I thought that was so funny that when you asked if I had to change the clothes, I'm like, Who just has a change of clothes in their car?
Me.
Why?
Me.
What?
Yeah.
Hey, gym clothes. Maybe you, I keep it extra large because, like, I don't know if I'm gonna spill something on myself. I don't know if I'm gonna, like, get really sweaty or something. It's just to have it. It's like a safety thing almost. And then I remember as like we walked out of the church and we were about to go to dinner, and I was like, okay, people kept their peace here because it was a talk and they wanted to focus on, Father AP was talking. We're about to go to dinner with everybody. We're about to go to a restaurant with everybody.
Yeah.
And sit down. So there's not gonna be any hiding. I'm like, I remember, it's like that was when I kind of reached my boiling point. It's like I don't think we didn't get into like a serious argument, but we had a bit of a spat.
No, you just insulted me, and I knew where you were coming from, so I did my absolute best not to let it get to me.
Yeah.
I think you got about 10% to me.
I think the words I used were drug-dealing hermaphrodites.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, I think those were the terms. But
Which normally would be perfectly fine, but it was the way you said it.
To your credit, you've come a long way since then. In other contexts, it's like I've seen you show up to parties now. It's like you get clean, you clean up. It's like I'm actually a little bit impressed in some areas, and then like you're beginning to adopt the same business mindset as well. AD, in terms of who your exceptional self is,
Padre Pio.
Matt Fradd.
I think my exceptional self would be a version of me that is not plagued by the spirit of fear. So I think different people, like, we all have different things that we struggle with, but I think it's also important to identify like what specifically is it. Like, so sometimes like we have different like addictions or tendencies or whatever. A lot of times we misidentify where that's coming from or what it actually is, like what the source of it is. Like, so for example, like lust is a common one. A lot of times people think it's like it's like, oh, it's a lust problem. It's a lust problem. You just have like this insatiable desire for pleasure or whatever. But sometimes it's actually not.
I've actually heard most of the time.
It actually goes deeper, and if you go deeper, it's actually coming from a place of fear, or it's coming from a place of sorrow, or what have you. So I think the version of myself is one that's liberated. One that's like not. The most excellent version would be one that's not weighed down.
One that's not
by these
tied down by the mortal coil.
The what?
The mortal coil.
What is that?
Life.
There's an Alexander the Great quote that goes, "In the moment where a man is free from fear is the moment that he is immortal."
I think so. I think to live without fear would be to actually like truly live. But that's hard.
It's interesting because it's almost like we're referencing a lot of our older podcasts. We talked a lot about, in the Myers-Briggs one, Myers-Miggs, as I call it, we talked about the Jordan Peterson personality test.
Oh, yeah.
And we brought AD up a lot in it because we'd go like...
Because he got big neuroticism.
Neuroticism, conscientiousness, and stuff like that. Right. I'm curious because you do mention fear. How do you feel like that manifests in yourself?
Can I say it? Because I love... just recently we had a story where over the weekend we were driving to the Texas barbecue in my car that hadn't had an oil change. It was over by about a week, maybe a week and a half, and I hadn't topped it up. And it had been perfectly fine until you said, "Yo, your engine might seize this. How long is this?" You started asking me a bunch of questions, and I was like, "We're not doing this. Shut up. Stop it." I literally said, I was like, "Stop it. We're not doing this. We're in the car. We're driving there."
You were like trying to spread your anxiety about it.
Because I had no issue with this. I was like, "Oh yeah, I need an oil change soon."
I was like, this guy learned about cars last week, and now he wants to...
I'd say the peak though was your diet phase.
Yeah, for sure.
That was the phase before Catholicism.
Yeah.
Which is we'll pretend it's the ultimate be-all end-all phase, but
I mean, it's the one that's lasted the longest
so far.
So
I feel like the next one is Marxist. I'm kidding.
what about Islam?
Oh my god, that would be awesome.
But it's actually fascinating. Like if you read like demonology and stuff, it's really interesting because.
Well, hang on, we're gonna go down a lot of literature again.
What?
I asked you a question. How do you feel like your fear manifests in you?
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna answer the question, but then Jared answered it for me.
We'll answer it now. Or I'll hit you.
We know it. The 7 deadly sins all hold hands.
I think probably, yeah, like Murphy's Law, a lot of times, like the worst thing that can happen will happen.
And it'll happen
And so
in the
you
worst way
just,
possible.
you kind of spiral and you just try to, yeah, you basically always think like, oh no, it's going to happen, or you become too, yeah, you just don't have enough faith in really anything, right? You just basically think, okay, there's a good probability that this will happen, even though like, and that actually it's interesting because Marcus Aurelius talks about this too. We suffer most in imagination than in reality.
Yeah.
It's totally true with people who struggle with like fear, right? They're constantly afraid of different things happening. It has to do with, yeah, basically if you have an active imagination, which I do, well, it can be a blessing and a curse, right? Because then you can just imagine these ridiculous scenarios that will probably have less than a 1% chance of manifesting.
But that's a 1%
But because
chance.
the thing is, it's like it shapes your reality, right? Because when you, for example, like in that moment in your car, all you saw was like, I just need an oil change, but there's still oil there.
Yeah.
We can get to where we need to be. What I saw is this engine's gonna seize. Right? So we're looking at the same thing, but we'll have a completely different experience.
And you know what? Those pistons only started misfiring after you said these things.
I cursed it. I'm sorry. But yeah, I think it usually happens in those ways. Now, I think it's gotten actually a lot better over the last couple of years, but obviously it's still almost habitual, right? Just because you've sort of learned to think this way. It's just how you think now, right? And so trying to de-learn or trying to unlearn, trying to reprogram is really hard. And like different, you know, like in your case, well, do you think that there's something that weighs you down? Because in my case, I know it's like fear.
Mine's laziness.
But
I think on the other side of my ambitions, because my ambitions are like, I consider them to be the moral right thing to do, but I think there's something on the other side of them that can be the issue, right? When I think about wealth, I want wealth because I want to enjoy the finer things in life, and I want to provide for those around me. I often think about it in that line from that one movie, I want to be a river to my people. But on the other side of that is greed. It's, I want them for me. I think about becoming exceptional and doing great things and being known for it. I want to be known as somebody who people can rely on. I want to be known as somebody who has done good things for people. But then there is pride. There is, I want my name to be inscribed on the monuments to me. So there's that. And this can lead me to be delusional about some ideas. I won't even say I feel like delusional might be harsh, but I'll overblow my own ambitions, and then I'll end up setting unrealistic goals. Right? So that's definitely something. I think there's, like I said, there's things that can be along those same lines. Is like a lot of my goals have those two sides to them, and then striking the balance is very important. When I think about what my most exceptional self is, well, along the same lines, we call commonly in our vernacular now, every man calls another man a king. I want to be the king of kings.
Oh, dang.
It's not good enough to be good.
Yeah.
I must be great. And I've put that on myself now. And with that has come responsibility. And the responsibility is a weight. It's now, when I used to make a mistake when I was younger, I would shrug it off. I'll make the same mistake tomorrow. I don't care. Now I make the mistake, I'll be like, I lost a step. I tried turning it around. I write a weekly message to you guys at the beginning of each week. This week, I've decided I'm going to turn it around. I'll be like, nope, we're going to accept providence. We're going to be on gratitude today. This week, I'm going to start focusing on the things I have left, the things I can do good with now, and to enjoy, to love the labor. Not just to think about what the dream is in the end, but to have fun in the present moment and enjoy that.
Yeah.
That's also what the Forest Creek is about. It's about doing what you love. So there's a lot of that. In terms of my exceptional self, well, I think I've outlined it a lot, but I think the Forest Creek is really the culmination of it. Because if I'm able to accomplish that goal, I must therefore be that person. And that's something I'm striving to do a lot. I think it'll end with a good version of myself, a better version of myself, hopefully a great one, an exceptional one, so that I can do something that is enough negative entropy to survive, and not just negative entropy to last beyond me, but to give other people something they can build on top of. I want somebody to unearth the Forest Creek for themselves and be able to use that as the point that they jump off of to do great things themselves. It's a big dream, and it still is a dream, but every day it becomes more real. And I'm going to keep working at it till infinity. This is how we chill from 23 till. That's 2023 till infinity here at the Forest Creek.
What?
On the social media and podcasting platforms at the Forest Creek, youtube.com/@therealforestcreek. Our website is up and will continue to be up and get better. That's theforestcreekweb.com. Reach out and get in contact with us at theforestcreek@gmail.com.
Whoa.
We're working on a project right now that is actually quite personal to me. It's to restore St. George, the St. George community. Our campaign for that is going to be coming up. We'll be pushing that a lot more. He's nodding now like it's a wrap.
He's doing gangsta.
And as always, lots of other fun things. So remember to like, share, subscribe, join us on this journey till infinity. Not just for the next 6 months, not just for the next year, not just for the next 5 years,
Oh, snap.
for all time, because the quest is infinite. That's 23 till here at the Forest Creek. I'm Raph.
I'm Jared.
I'm AD.
Bye-bye.
Bye.